Alright, well this is going to be a super short installation video for the rear shock tower brace for the 2004 through 2007 CTSVs made by Gen 1B, which are available for sale on gen1b.com. But the first step is going to be, get the car up in the air and get the wheels and tires off both sides, and then go ahead and drop your shocks. Once you get that done outside the car, you can come inside. You will need to take out the seat bottom, the seat back, and then the carpet inside the trunk. Both the bottom carpet, if you're doing the track kit, or just the two side carpets, side panels if you're just going to be doing the street kit. But once you've got all the carpet and the seats out, so the next step is to use the provided drilling template to drill a pilot hole that you're going to use to mount the brace down to the shock tower. So with the kit are a couple of bolts, several bolts that you can use as a guide. You'll go ahead and install those where the shocks normally go through, and then from the bottom side you'll be able to install this just like that. And then, in case you didn't see it, here on the drilling template, this really small hole right there where my finger is, that is where you're going to use a really small drill bit just to drill your pilot hole. So again, install this just like that. Don't get it reversed and do it backwards, because you'll drill your hole in the wrong spot. Get it installed. You can run some nuts on there if you want to hold it in place, but then use a small drill bit and drill your pilot hole on both sides. Once you've done that, of course, you can take this back off and use a drill bit that's sized for this size bolt, and go ahead and drill out your final hole. Once you've drilled your final hole right here, and I know that my car has two holes, and that's because I was using this car as the template to build the brace from, and the first time I didn't like where I had the hole, and so I had to move it. And so kind of just ignore that hole, you won't have that. But once you drilled your hole, you'll notice there's this rubberized coating that's all over the underside here. You are going to want to take a screwdriver or something and scrape that off. You'll want to scrape off enough material that later, whenever we get to the point of installing the brace, this little nut right here is going to sit right there, if you can see, and with all the rubberized coating and everything that's kind of in the way, it doesn't let it sit nice and flat and sit all the way against that edge right there. So once you scrape off some of that rubberized coating, that will fit right there exactly where you want it to go. Alright, so this is what the brace looks like. Those holes that we just drilled in the shock tower are for this center hole right here in the middle of the brace. So you're going to be using, of course, the two shock tower bolts to install the brace, but then you're also going to use that hole that you just drilled to put yourself a bolt right down through this hole, just like that. And then on the other side, underneath the wheel well, is where you're going to use that nut that I showed you, where you scraped off the rubberized coating and everything. So the next step will be to just get the brace inside the car, drop these two bolts, one on either side, down into the hole, and you can go ahead and also tighten down the two nuts that hold the shocks into place as well. Alright, you can see I've got the brace kind of loosely into place. It's just sitting right there on the floor pan, and then sitting up here on the shock towers, I've got one of those bolts that I showed you before in each of the holes, And all I'm going to do is reach around, to the other side of the car and put this in place like I showed you earlier, and use my little 1/4 inch ratchet here with a 13, I think this is a 13 millimeter 9/16, and get this tightened down. Alright, so I've got that bolt tight. You can see the nut here. You can see how it is pushed right against the back edge of this shock pad right here. And you can see that rubberized coating that I had talked about before, how I just scraped some of that off just so that can sit all the way against the far side, and then so that it will sit nice and flat. I guess I still need to scrape a little bit, but kind of got that where I want it. The next step is going to be going ahead and raising the shock into place, going up through these 2 holes, and we'll get the nuts on the other side and just mount the shocks back into place. Now, if you look at the shock, I'll get it here in the light. If you look at the shock, it's got this rubberized coating. It's just like a rubber pad. And that will touch right against that nut and just kind of deflect out of the way. If you wanted to, you could take maybe a knife or something and just trim just a little bit of that rubber off the top of the shock there if you just didn't want it to touch. This is the factory shock. If you have an aftermarket shock of some kind, they all have a very similar profile to the factory shock, but a lot of times they're a solid aluminum block, and so if that's the case, you might have to come in here with a grinder and just create just a little bit of clearance if for whatever reason that nut is touching the side of that, or is getting trapped underneath the that block and won't let the shock go all the way up. You can just trim that aluminum block if you have an aftermarket one. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and get this installed. I'm not going to trim mine or anything. Like I said, that rubber just kind of deflects out of the way and doesn't cause any problems. So I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute. Alright, now I've got the shock installed. You can see I'm not sure how well it's going to come across in video. I'll try to get pretty close, but you can see how that nut sits just between the shock and the outside edge of this mounting pad here for the shock tower. It just sits right in there in between, and as you can see, if you look really closely, that rubberized, that little rubber trim is just kind of deflected out of the way. Again, if you wanted to, you could take a knife or something and trim that off if you just wanted to have a nice clean appearance or something, if you don't want that to touch. But at that point, if you are installing just the street kit, that is, the street kit is the bar that goes across, but it does not have these mounting points down to this floor pan. At this point, you would basically be done. You would go ahead and mount the bottom of your shocks down there. Go ahead, reinstall your seats, reinstall your wheels and tires, and take some time to cut your carpet so that it would fit. The side carpets are going to need a slit and a hole cut so that you can install the carpet back into place. And that takes some time to kind of figure out where to cut your hole and do all that. I definitely recommend taking some masking tape and wrapping the brace just to protect the powder coat, because as you're sliding that carpet on and off, it's kind of a hard plastic, those side panels are, and so it'll scratch up that powder coat if you're not careful. So just wrap the brace with some masking tape while you're going through the process of getting your carpet cut the way that you would like it, and then reinstall everything. And if that were the case, you're done. The next step I'm going to move to is only necessary if you are installing the track kit, which includes the floor pan mounting, as you can see right there. Alright, now the first step in getting this mounted is to cut yourself an access hole that you can use to reach through here and get to the 3 different nuts that we're going to use to install this. For that, I used a 1-inch hole saw that I modified a little bit, because when you buy these 1-inch hole saws from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, the drill bit, the tip, sticks out, pretty far. And with the fuel tank being right behind this panel, I was worried when I drilled my hole and went through, I didn't want to, drill into the fuel tank. So to make that drill bit shorter, I noticed that if you, there's a little set screw right there. If you undo that, you can remove the drill bit. And if you shave, just grind a little bit of material off of the back of that drill bit. Be careful, you can go too far. And if you go too far, you won't be able to reinstall it. But there is a little bit of material you can take off and then reinstall it inside the bit, and that will get it about halfway down to where you want it to go. The other thing I did, if you'll notice, I unscrewed the arbor from the bit and installed this washer in between the two, and that just helped to pull that drill bit tip down further inside the hole saw. So once I did that, I measured left to right. This pad is not perfectly centered in the body of the car, so you can't just eyeball it. You have to actually measure it and get your center line. And if you can see, that right there is fuel tank, so it's really close. Just be really careful. Drill your hole, use light pressure, and as soon as you go through, just stop. You can see you've got a little bit of variation there. So if you punch through, you just need to be careful, all right? Kind of do this at your own risk, right? You don't want to damage that fuel tank. But once that hole is there, now you just take a drill bit in your drill, and you can drill all 3 of your holes, just like that. If you're worried about scratching the powder coat, obviously you could just mark the holes and then take the brace back out. And then once you drilled your holes, kind of put it back down. Now, you do need to be careful when you drill these 3 holes. So over here on the left-hand side, on some cars, there is an electrical connector right over here. Some of your models don't have those, some do. I don't know which of your models do and don't, but some have that. Mine has it. And that sits right over here, so just be careful not to drill too deep and get into that electrical connector. This hole over here is fairly safe. There's something kind of right over here, but it's pretty far away. You're not in a lot of danger of getting into it. Just be careful not to punch through too far. You just want to, as soon as you go through the floor pan, just stop. And then over here, there is a hose that comes and kind of goes right around. It actually touches this back floor plate. If you reach in here with your finger, you can feel it with your finger. But it kind of comes right around here and then loops back up over here. So you're kind of drilling right in its U shape. So once you've drilled your access hole, kind of reach over there and feel for it. Make sure you know where it is and that you're comfortable with where you're drilling. But yeah, so just be really careful, because you are really close to some electrical connectors and hoses and the fuel tank and everything else. So you definitely want to take your time and make sure that you don't make a mistake drilling these holes. Alright, so the next step is going to be actually getting in there and putting the nuts into place and just screwing your bolts down. I do ship with the kit these nuts that we've been using before. I have them welded to a washer, and to get them into place, it's kind of a long reach, and so you might laugh, but here's what I did. I just took some electrical tape and taped it to my finger. That way I didn't drop it, and just used that to stick my finger in there. And I'll never get the right camera angle, but that'll let you get in there and get your 3 nuts into place. And once that's done, I have a little um, 1-inch plastic grommet that fills that hole. So you can pop that into place, and then you'll have to lay your bottom carpet in here, and spend some time carefully cutting out your carpet for the for the for the tubing. And at that point, with this kit, you can go ahead and reinstall the seat back, the seat bottom, and yeah, and you're done. That concludes the install of this rear shock tower brace.